have a special guest with us today from the Blue Collar Comedy Tour. Oh, I hope it's Jeff Foxworthy. I bet it is.
Howdy, y'all. Howdy.
Oh.
Hi, Martha.
And who are you?
I'm Bill Engvall, part of the Blue Collar Comedy Tour. We tour America, you know, redneck humor. That's where I got a whole shtick on stupid things that people do. That's my whole gimmick, you know. Here's your sign, stupid.
Okay, did you have a sign for us today?
Oh, well, I see we're working with some, what's that, fruitcake there? Oh, I love a good fruitcake. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll be happy to share it with you. This fruitcake is vintage 98.
Oh, that's a good year, yeah.
It is. A fruitcake only gets better with age. It becomes a sweet, delectable, festive gift that anyone would want. And maybe you'd like to help me wrap it.
Oh, I'd love to,
Oh,
certainly.
good.
Yes, Oh, I think you're gonna get a sign.
Yes, there's going to be a sign, all right. This is a bad thing. A very bad thing.
All right, good morning. Good to see you. We are trying to help us be better at regifting, but not exactly that kind of regifting this Christmas. It's good to see you. I told you earlier in the service, I'm Chris. I'm one of the pastors here, and I hope you had a great week. I want to tell you, we had a great week, and I just want to tell you, as our church family, thanks for those of you that prayed for us. We had a baby that was due on Christmas Eve, and we had some minor complications early in the week that didn't endanger the baby or endanger the mom, but meant we got to meet our little girl this week. So, yeah, thank you. Thanks for your prayers, and life's good. I think we brought some pictures because I've got the microphone. I can do that. That's our 4-year-old and our 2-year-old, Kason and Kale, with Campbell Elliott. They are smitten. They just absolutely love her. And this is the rest of the family. You can see God has done some really, really great things for me. And I'm filled with joy to get to share them with you. And so thank you for those of you that prayed for us and cared for us. I married an incredible woman, and I'm getting to see that this week, just like I always do. But thank you for praying for us. And it's been a really, really good week for us. So we are continuing a series that we've called Regift. And the idea is to help us be better at regifting, because the truth is all of us have been the recipients of regifts, right? You've been at a party or maybe at a gift where you unwrapped something that you were pretty sure when you unwrapped it, you were not the original person that was supposed to get that gift. It was something so random or so off the wall or so not you that you just knew what happened is that somebody else had received the gift and had stashed it away in a closet sometime. And when they gave you this gift, what they were really saying is, I didn't really like you enough to go shopping, but I like me enough to not show up to this thing empty-handed, so here's a present. And maybe, I know it's random, I know you're probably not going to like it, but maybe, if nothing else, you can show up to a party someday where you don't like somebody or just don't want to show up empty-handed, and you can re-gift this. And some of us have things that have been passed down over and over and over that are re-gifts that started off as maybe something very legitimate, but now we pass them along in our white elephant exchanges because they're so horrible and so lame and so terrible that we just think the funniest, most rude thing we could do is to re-gift it. So we do. And most of the time, regifting is an insult to the person that originally gave the gift and also to the receiver of the gift, because they're gifts that just don't have any real value or thought attached to them. But every once in a while, there's a gift that the whole point of the gift is to pass the gift down, right? You ever received a precious family heirloom that you knew when you saw it that someday it would be yours? And you hoped for it, and you dreamed about it, and you thought about it, and someday, one day, maybe your dad took you out and you went on a camp out and he handed you that heirloom, and now it's yours, and you got to cherish it and treasure it. Or other gifts that just as soon as you unwrap them, you realize this is a gift that is so extravagant, it's so costly, it's so incredible. When you open it, you realize that it's the thing that it's at the very top of one of your friends or one of your family members' lists. It's something that they've been searching for, something they couldn't find, something that they wanted more than anything else. And in that moment, when you open that extravagant gift, when you see it, you know that what you want to do more than anything else is to make sure that person you love has access to the gift you've received. That one of the greatest things you could do is to re-gift the gift. And what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, what we started to see last week, is that at Christmas, the Christmas story, God intended the gift He gave all of humanity to be that kind of gift. of an immense value, an indescribable gift that, as it turns out, is at the top of every single one of our lists, even if we didn't ever really anticipate it to show up in this particular package. Even if we didn't expect to find it wrapped in swaddling clothes, laying in a manger, God anticipated that when he gave us the gift of Jesus, he was giving us an indescribable gift that he desired to be regifted. We started last week, we've been looking in Isaiah chapter 9 at a pretty familiar passage where God promises that he's going to send a child. That God didn't just look at the world that was falling apart, a world that was broken, and yell from heaven, you guys fix it, okay? Clean this stuff up. He sent a son. He gave a child who would intersect our need and meet our greatest need, our need for a Savior, but also give us hope for today. That when he gave Jesus, he gave the thing that was at the top of all of our lists. And in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, what we see is God says, I'm going to send you a child. I'm going to give you my son. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. We said last week, that doesn't just mean that he's going to have a lot of weird names. What God had in mind was that these would be the ways that people who knew Jesus best would describe him. That people who know Jesus the very best would say, oh, Jesus, you know what's true about Jesus? Jesus is a wonderful counselor. He's a mighty God. He's an everlasting Father. He's a Prince of Peace. That's how people would describe Jesus, who know him the best. And what we've said is, for those of us who've received the gift, for the next several weeks, we're going to re-examine the gift. Because even now, when you think back about other gifts that you've received that were extravagant, that were incredible, you know what your response was when you received them. They filled you with joy. And even remembering and reflecting back on those moments as a family together, it reminds us of the joy that we felt. Well, in an even more incredible way, as we, those of us that received the gift of Jesus, look back at what it is that God provided to us in sending us his son. It reminds us of the joy that we had when we very first received the gift. But it also allows us to refresh our minds so that as we're in conversations with friends and with family, with people that we love, and we remember that what we've received is at the very top of their list, we're equipped and prepared to re-gift the gift. See, everybody's looking for direction in life. Everybody's looking for strength to make it another day. Everybody looking for somebody to love them. And everybody's looking for someone who can make life work, who can give us paradise. The life that we feel somehow inside of us we were created to live. That's what all of us are looking for. God says to all of us, Merry Christmas. Here's a wonderful counselor, a mighty God, an everlasting Father, a Prince of Peace. This morning I want us to focus on the part of the promise where God promises to send us a wonderful counselor. A lot of times when we look at Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, and we see that the people who know Jesus best call him a wonderful counselor, we think what God's promised us in that passage is an above average shrink, right? We look at it and we think, man, it must just be somebody. When we think of counselor, we think of a person that will sit on a couch with us and listen to us as we unpack our daddy issues and help us to kind of dig out and unwind from the stuff that we've done in our past. And many of you in this room have benefited from a person like that. I've benefited from a person like that in my life who's been able to help me unpack stuff and give me a different outside perspective on things. That's a great thing. That's not what this passage is promising. Those kinds of people have only been in our world really for the last couple of 100 years since Sigmund Freud. When God promises a wonderful counselor, he's promising something even bigger than that. In the Bible, when you thought of a counselor, you were thinking primarily of a strategist. When the Bible talks about a counselor, it was talking about a person who someone with means or resources or finances could call in, usually a king, to help them think through something they're not equipped to be able to think through. Somebody who would be able to help them give advice and receive advice in areas that they weren't equipped to succeed. You know, as we've anticipated the birth of our daughter over the last couple of months, I've been become reacquainted with hell on earth, which is also known as IKEA. You're familiar with IKEA, right? Because IKEA is the store where you go into this massive, huge store and you go shopping, and you pay for the privilege of assembling your own furniture. And so you walk into this huge store and you see the dresser that you've always wanted. It's sitting on a shelf, and you say, okay, I'll take that dresser. You go downstairs and you get a little 4x6 box, right, that this dresser is inside of. And what they intend is that you'll take this little 4x6 box home and you'll open up the contents of the box, and out will spread all of the pieces of your dresser that you were hoping to have for your child. And you begin to put it together, and what happens, you spread all the pieces out on the floor, and then you reach in and you grab the instructions, and that's when you find out that somewhere in Sweden there is a person who hates you. All you want is a dresser, and you want to be able to go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to voila, here's a dresser. And yet what you find when you start to read through these packages is exactly how hard it is to get a dresser. See, that's what you think. How hard can this be? But there's a guy in Sweden that wants you to know. And so he writes it out, 78 steps to having the dresser of your dreams using pieces that are not included in this box. And all through trying to put together this furniture, you think, does it really have to be this hard? I mean, isn't there a better way? And I wonder if you ever find yourself wondering the same thing about life. We did parent dedications this morning for a whole lot of parents that desperately want to be great parents for their kids. In fact, they're going to consult instructions. There are billions of instruction manuals available for how to parent your kid. No parent decides on the front end. I've never met a parent in the hospital that said, you know what, our goal is to mess up our kid as much as possible by the time he's 18 and we kick him out of our house. We want to be great parents. We try to be great parents. We consult the instruction manual for being great parents, and yet when we read them, we find ourselves confused because they don't even agree with each other. And the people that we know and we trust that give us advice, the magazines that we read, they don't agree with each other. They contradict each other. They're confusing. And in fact, a lot of times what we find when we read those books is we end up more defeated than we were when we started. And we wonder if it's possible to put together a great family. We do the same thing with marriage. Everybody wants to have a great marriage, don't we? And there are millions of instruction manuals out there for how to have a great marriage, but they're confusing. They contradict each other. If you're involved in a business or an organization, you want to lead a great organization. You want to be a great boss. You want to be a great employee. And there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of instruction manuals for how to be a great boss and how to be a great employee. But you got a client meeting you got to prepare for on Tuesday, and you don't have time, much less the energy, to be confused and confounded and conflicted. And so what we do in all of the areas of our life that we need all of this help is we just wing it, don't we? I mean, I don't have time to read all of the books on parenting. I don't have all the time to read all of the instructions on being a great husband and having a great marriage. I don't have time to read all of the instruction manuals on how to be a great business leader, how to lead a great organization. I don't have time. I don't have the ability, and I'm probably going to get confused anyway, so I just wing it, right? And there are a whole lot of us in this room that have made that decision. I'm not going to understand the instructions anyway, so I'm just going to try to assemble this thing as best I can on my own. And for some of you, that's worked out relatively well, but the truth is all of us feel the burn from that strategy, don't we? It may be that your family's fallen apart and you feel it acutely, but it may be that you don't feel like your family's fallen apart. Things are going okay, but the truth is, deep down inside of you, when you look at your kids, you know they deserve a better parent than you. That you're not quite totally cutting it like you hoped that you would. You know deep down, you could be a better husband, a better wife, a better child, a better student. Do you know deep down when you look at your organization and the way that you lead that you could reflect Christ better in your workplace? You could be a better boss. You could be a better employee. And by winging it, you may not have something in front of you that's fallen apart, but somewhere inside of you, you realize it doesn't really measure up to the picture. To all of us, God says at Christmas, he's going to send a wonderful counselor, a strategist, a person who can lean into the areas where we don't have expertise, where we don't have the knowledge that we need, where we don't have the maturity that we need. We don't have the answers that we need. Someone who's going to come with wisdom, who's equipped in the areas where we desperately need to succeed. But he doesn't just promise that he's going to add to the stack of resources. You notice in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, God doesn't say, unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and his name will be called another counselor. He doesn't just promise another perspective on the stack full of resources. He promises us a wonderful counselor, which is another word that needs a little bit of explanation. We don't usually drop other languages on you at McKinney Church. You know that the Old Testament was originally written in Hebrew, and most of our English translations are extremely, extremely good. So we don't have to understand the original language always in order to be able to get the gist or even the main point of what a passage is trying to say to us. But every once in a while, there's a word that's so big or so specialized or so technical that English can't even capture its full breadth. And this is one of those words. The word for wonderful in Isaiah 9:6 is the Hebrew word palah. And it's almost only used in the Bible referring to things that God does himself, which are beyond human capability. Those are the things that the Bible talks about that are palah. It's things that only God can accomplish, only God can do. It's the kinds of things that when you see them or when you hear them or when you live them, you are filled with wonder. They're wonderful kinds of things. They're the kinds of things that when you see them or when you experience, you step back or you fall back and you go, wow, only God could do that. Only God could come up with that. Only God could say that. Things that fill us with wonder. So when you put together the promise of what God has said he's sending in a baby, God promises a strategist. God promises someone with a wisdom and a knowledge and a plan for life that works, that when you see it or when you live it or when you experience it, you step back and you say, wow, only God could come up with that. Only God could do that. This person that God's sending into the world would be able to come alongside us in a way that certainly gives us hope for an eternal future. We'll talk about that later. But somebody who can give us a plan for today. Somebody who can give us instruction for today that works. That when we see it, or we hear it, or we experience it, we fall back. We say, only God could do that. That's what God sent when he sent a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And he promised a wonderful counselor. In fact, I want to show you in the Bible one place that it's obvious. This is obvious throughout Jesus' life. The truth is, we could have picked hundreds of different verses to look at because Jesus is constantly giving counsel and strategy and a plan to people who just can't get it on their own, to the point that they step back and say, wow. In fact, if you ever want a project, you're looking for some motivation to read through the scriptures, pick a gospel, any of the gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, and read the story of Jesus' life and circle every time Jesus says something or does something, and everybody who's around says, who is this man? It happens all of the time in the book of Luke. When Jesus does something or said something, all of the people around him, whether they follow him or not, step back and they say, wow, who is this guy? This isn't normal. This isn't the kind of thing that we would normally come up with, and he does it all throughout his life. But Matthew chapter 5 is one really, really familiar example of Jesus serving as a wonderful counselor. Matthew chapter 5, if you don't have a Bible this morning, grab one that looks like mine. They're spread out in the seats around you, and turn to page 677. And if you don't own a Bible, or the one that you have doesn't make sense when you read it, grab this one and take it home with you as our gift. We'd love for you to be able to follow the rest of the story and see all of the different places in Jesus' life where he shows himself to be a wonderful counselor. Matthew chapter 5, or page 607. Jesus is just on the scene, and people begin to notice that there's something different about this guy. And he begins to teach, and what he begins to teach about in Matthew chapter 5 is how to be truly happy. Isn't that what all of us are searching for? Right? When you think about what you're asking for on your Christmas list, or you think about what you're asking for your life, if you could ask God for one thing, aren't you going to go to the thing that's going to make you happy? Isn't that what we want? But Jesus is talking about a different kind of happiness than the kind that we get from getting a toy. He's talking about an abiding, deep, lasting happiness that comes when you experience the favor of God. And Jesus comes to these people and says, that's what the word blessed means, happiness because of the favor of God. Jesus says to these people, if you want to experience happiness that lasts because of God's favor, here's how that happens. Matthew chapter 5, beginning in verse 2. He began to teach them. Look at what he says. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed, happy because of God's favor, are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people say, and when people insult you, or persecute you, or falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice, be glad, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Now think about all of the things that Jesus just said. Those aren't natural, are they? Would they be on your instructions that you would write out for your kids about how to find happiness in their life? Blessed are you when you're really, really sad. Be mournful, because it'll get better. That's how to find happiness. Blessed are you when you're meek, when you understand the power that you have, and you bring it under control, you restrain it. You learn how to use it in an appropriate way. That's not what we teach each other. Doesn't it seem backwards? The meek shall inherit the earth. Come on, the meek isn't even going to inherit the business, right? That's not what our instruction manuals say to each other. We say if you want to inherit the business, if you want this thing to go well, if you want to have something to left your kids, you better figure out how to manipulate people. Well, we wouldn't say manipulate. We would say, well, you got to figure out how to leverage your power. You got to figure out what your strength is, and you better make sure everybody in your workplace knows it. They got to know who's in charge. They got to know who's the boss. It doesn't say anything about restraining our power, about being meek, about having our power under control. Come on, that doesn't compute. That's backwards. Blessed are the peacemakers. That's not how we do marriage. We're not peacemakers in marriage, are we? Not naturally. We're peace getters in marriage. And that's different. I mean, come on, read some of the magazines that you see when you're standing in line at the supermarket about how to get your spouse to do what you want them to do so that you can have peace in your house. Here's a way, here are 25 ways to get your husband to do what you want him to do, even though he doesn't want to do it, so that you can have peace in your house. We talk about filling up each other's love banks because we're intending to make deposits, and we're talking about how we can just make sure that we can get peace in our house. We're not peacemakers. That's not how to do marriage. That's not how to do family. Blessed are the humble, the poor in spirit. Those aren't in the instructions that we write for each other. It push against our instincts. And we worry if we follow these plans, they're going to turn our life upside down, right? They're going to flip our family upside down. They're going to take our marriage and turn it backwards, and we don't want that, and so we push against Jesus' counsel. But I want to show you something. Flip back to the book of Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 29, page 492 on these Bibles. Isaiah chapter 29, beginning in verse 14. This is the same book where the wonderful counselor is promised. And God's writing to the people saying, when I send this wonderful counselor and he's fully in control, when he comes and he fixes the world, this is something that you're going to notice from him. Look at verse 14 of Isaiah chapter 29. God says this to the people. Therefore, once more I will astound these people with wonder upon wonder, with palah upon palah. The wisdom, that's in air quotes, of the wise, air quotes, will perish. The intelligence of the intelligent will vanish. Woe to those who go to great depth to hide their plan from the Lord, who do their work in darkness and think, who sees us? Who will know? You turn things upside down, as if the potter were thought to be like the clay. Shall we, what is formed, say to the one who formed it, you did not make me? Can the pot say to the potter, you know nothing? God says, in the face of this gift, no. Jesus is not going to flip your life upside down. Jesus is not going to turn your life backwards. You look at the counsel that Jesus gives and you think it's going to flip your life upside down. You hear what he says and you think, you know what, meek, pure in heart, that seems like a really great way to get walked all over in my house. Seems like a really great way to get taken advantage of in my business. It's a way to get left behind. Jesus says, no, it's a pretty good strategy to get life right side up. And the truth is, you don't even need to know Jesus that well to know that this is wonderful counsel, do you? You ever worked with a person that's got power under control? Somebody that owns your business or leads your organization? And they have all kinds of power over your paycheck, over your life, over your happiness. But they decide to take what power they have and bring it under control in such a way that they platform you. They set you up. They help make your job easier and better. They're meek. A person who's humble, who's pure in heart, who hungers and thirsts after righteousness. You ever work with a person like that? You know what you call a person like that? The most important person in the organization. The most irreplaceable person at work. Everybody wants to work with a person like that. Everybody wants to work for a boss like that. Marriage. You ever see a marriage with a husband that's poor in spirit? Who loves his family by pursuing righteousness? Who's meek? Who hungers and thirsts for the right thing? That's not a husband that gets walked over by his wife. You know what you'll find when you find a husband like that? You find a wife who will fall all over herself to love him well. You know what you see when you look at Jesus' counsel? It's wonderful. It's not anything we ever would have come up with. It's not anything that we would have cast for ourselves. It makes us fall back when we see it and say, wow, he's right. It's not just something that he taught, it's something that he lived. See, what you find in Isaiah 29 is true. It's not just that Jesus is threatening to turn your life upside down. It's that if you pay attention to the wonderful counselor, he can take your life and turn it right side up. That's the promise of a wonderful counselor. Jesus gives direction that turns life right side up. Haven't some of you discovered this? And it's not that your family's perfect. It's not that your marriage is totally put together. It's not that your business is running exactly like it should, but that's not because the instructions were poor. Those of you that know Jesus the best know that his counsel is wonderful. His strategy for life here is wonderful. Because he's the mighty God with perspective of all of time and all of eternity and all of relationships. It works. When God intervened, he didn't just say to us, calling down from heaven, hey, figure out marriage. Figure out this parenting thing. Good luck. Figure out how to lead your business, and it better reflect me. No, he sent a child. He gave his son. He gave his son as a wonderful counselor who could give wisdom that could only come from God. Jesus said the way to be strong, you want to be strong? Jesus said be weak. You want to experience victory? Surrender. You want to have life? You got to die. And those of you that know Jesus the best, fall back. Say, wow, he's right. That's the only way life works. It's a wonderful counselor. But here's the wonderful thing about the wonderful counselor. The message of the Bible and the message of Jesus was not try harder, do better. The message of Jesus is that he's a counselor who understands that you're trying hard. You're trying to do better. Is that our story? We're all trying to be better parents. We're all trying to be better husbands and better wives. We're all trying to be better in our business and in our life and everything that we're all trying to be better. The wonderful counselor knows that we're trying, but he knows that we can't. And because he's a child, a man who was sent, because that man was the Son, the everlasting Father of God who was given. He is the eternal God and he's holy man. He can give you hope for today and hope for eternity. See, the wonderful news about the story of a wonderful counselor is that if you'll connect with him, if you'll identify yourself with him, he'll take up residence inside of you and begin living his life through you. That he has the ability to wipe your slate clean, to give you hope, to give you life, to give you a fresh start, to give you a forever relationship with a wonderful counselor. In fact, for some of you, as you hear that, you realize, I've tried all of the other strategies. The problem is I've just had a strategy for here and now, today and tomorrow. I never had a strategy for eternity. And what God wants you to hear this morning is that his strategy for here and now falls inside his strategy for all of eternity. That's why he sent a child who was a man, 100% man, and a child who is God, 100% God, to show us, to lead us, to teach us, to die for us, to allow us to have hope for a future. If you've never connected with Christ and you realize that's a gift that you need as a wonderful counselor, that's the thing that you've been searching for. You've searched for direction. You've searched for something that would work. What Jesus wants you to hear is something that will cause you to fall back and go, wow. That's that he's the everlasting God who lived on this earth, grew up, and died for you to wipe your slate clean. In exchange for his death, he wants to give you life as a gift that's already paid for, that can be received right where you sit. If you've never received that gift, the wonderful counselor wants to be identified with you, wants you to be identified with him, and invites you right where you sit to trust him. And in your own words, say to God, right now, God, I'll take the gift. I need a wonderful counselor. I believe that Jesus died for me, that he rose from the dead, that he gives me everlasting life, hope forever with you, and he gives me a plan for this life that works. If you're connecting with Christ, we'd love to know about it and to celebrate with you. There's a place on that connection card where you can tell us, I'm connecting with Christ today. And the elders and their wives, the guys that lead our church, will be up here afterwards. They would love to celebrate with you. They'd love to pray with you. If you got questions about what that looks like or how it works, they'd love to answer some of those questions for you. You can run it to the Welcome Center and let them know, or you can drop it in the offering plate and let us know that you've connected with Christ today, that you've received the gift of a wonderful counselor. if you've already received this gift, I hope you'll spend the next couple of moments reflecting on what God gave you and the joy it gives to live life with a wonderful counselor, with someone from wisdom from God, with the power of God to empower us to live life today. And as we continue to sing, as you reflect on the joy that that brings to your life, I want you to ask the question, what would it look like to regift the gift? And to listen up as you leave this place today and as you engage in conversations with people that you love, as they lean into you about difficult marriages, about hard family situations, about something that they're navigating at business, that you'll be equipped to recognize what they want more than anything else is something that God's given that's right under their nose, wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger, a wonderful counselor. Let's pray. Father, that's our hope. We know that you didn't just send Jesus to tell us to fix it, and that you didn't just send Jesus to make us behave, to make us religious. You didn't just send Jesus for our eternity. You did send him for our eternity, but not just for that. He can give us hope for today. And God, there are friends of mine who are here today who desperately need hope. They need direction that can only come from you. And so, God, I ask in this week that you would reveal your Son to them, the wonderful counselor, and a plan that works, that can turn their life right side up. For all of us, Lord, who have looked at all of the instruction manuals and tried to wing it on our own, I pray that we'd look to you, that we'd find our hope in you, that we'd find direction from you, and that day after day after day, as we follow you, we would be forced to fall back and say, wow, our wonderful counselor is good because you are, and we're grateful. In Jesus' name, amen.